There we go. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crypto Marketing Insights with me, Yasha Harari. Today's going to be a little bit of a different format, but we are, in fact, streaming. So if you are on the stream, say hello, welcome all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll answer them. And we're going to see how this one goes today. It's been a little while since we've been on a live stream. A lot of technical reasons. Let's hope today we've solved all that with YouTube and with the other tubes we're sending through. Anyway, guys, wanted to speak to you guys today about some things that are happening in crypto and marketing and how adoption is happening by fiat. And what do I mean by all of that? Well, here we go. Not enough video. Well, let's see if we can get that fixed. Come on, YouTube. Let's see you fix this information. If you guys are in the stream and you can see us, go ahead and just let me know. Drop a 1 in there. In any case, drop a 1. Not like a webinar, but just say hi or something to let me know if the stream is working or if it's not working. Let me know. Should be working, but might be having some technical issues here with the bandwidth. Anyway, so what do I mean by crypto marketing and adoption by fiat? Well, like most things in countries where laws apply, there are things that matter. One of those things is education, right? I think we can all agree that is a topic of great interest to most nations because the more educated your populace, usually the better, the more well off that populace is. And we are seeing here yet another country, right? Russia did it a year or so ago where they mandated the education of their high school students to include some things about, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and they must be relatively proficient in those topics in order to get their high school diplomas now. Well, in France, they have just done the same thing. They are now mandating that high school students will learn about Bitcoin and crypto, right? So they're going to learn about Bitcoin. They're obviously going to learn about blockchain and cryptocurrency because there is no Bitcoin and there are pretty much no blockchain cryptocurrencies without blockchain. Right? Of course, there are DAG and there are other forms of distributed ledger technologies, as they call them. But you got to learn about the blockchain. It's the underlying technology of the bulk majority of this ecosystem, right? So they're teaching about Bitcoin, they're teaching about crypto. It's part of the regular education now, right? And if you think, wow, France, why? That's interesting. Why France? Nobody would have predicted France to be, one of the early pioneers in this space. Well, France has a lot of reasons to be a fan of Bitcoin, not the least of which is their, first of all, vast number of people born in other countries who travel through France as tourists or as immigrants, right, or on working visas. It is a very international country, as most countries are these days, right, especially in Western Europe. And so France is a country that has a lot of international money moving around. Well, what better way to move money around than with blockchain, right? If you understand how this stuff works, it's pretty much instantaneous, like instead of sending money from France to Nigeria or Japan or America or Canada or China or wherever, instead of that taking days or weeks, right, by the traditional banking systems, you can now send money within minutes or seconds on most blockchains, right? So that's very important, and it's a huge step forward. And it's one that in many ways is bigger than any possible trading news anybody could be reporting about today, right? Education, and this happened a few days ago, by the way, but I've been busy. But this is a big story. This is one that you won't see necessarily covered everywhere, but it is going to have a big impact, right? Why do I say that? Well, France is one of the G8 nations, right, or the G7 plus Russia or whatever. So France is one of the big 7 economies of the world. France is one of the big industrialized countries of the world. France is one of the big educational leaders of the world. France is one of the big R&D leaders of the world. France is one of the big space technology leaders of the world. There isn't an area of technology where you can just count out a nation as significant as France, right? The same is true for Germany or the UK, right? Or Canada, any of the G7, Japan, Australia, the United States, obviously. You can't discount when a country like that institutionalizes Bitcoin and crypto education. And remember, Russia already has done it. So now you have Russia, which is kind of in the G8 sometimes when they're not being yelled at by everyone else for invading Ukraine or other things. Russia already has it. Now France already has the beginning of their policy being put in place. And there are already, countries like Tunisia, if you haven't read that. Tunisia is launching its own decentralized digital currency, right? So what does that mean? Well, the point of Tunisia launching its own decentralized digital currency, right? Not a cryptocurrency in the traditional sense like Bitcoin. It is a central. I mean, it's centralized by the government, but it's distributed digitally, and certainly not, certainly not a Bitcoin competitor in that sense. At least not yet. It's still state centralized control, but it's distributed technology that they're using. And they're doing it part and parcel to get around the United States and the US dollar, right? And that is a direct threat to the United States dollar's reign supreme as the world's global reserve currency. Right? Now, don't expect Tunisia's dinar to suddenly become, the digital dinar to suddenly become the version of, the digital dollar, replacement. That's very unlikely to happen, right? However, it is a sign that a country in Africa, right, which is where Tunisia is located, right, for those of you who don't know geography, Tunisia is a Middle Eastern, Arabic-speaking, predominantly Muslim, very relatively moderate, geopolitically friendly, pro-democracy country sometimes. It was instrumental in the so-called Arab Spring, if you don't remember your history. Around 2011, there was this so-called Arab Spring that was happening. And if you're not aware of the geopolitics, it may seem like, why does it matter that Tunisia is launching a digital dinar? Well, for very much the same reason that it's important that France is launching education. Okay? If they get any kind of adoption on the street with their digital dinar, if they actually make it a national currency that is widely adopted and increasingly adopted even over their own fiat, which it won't be anytime soon, I'm sure, but we'll see. That is a strong message that nations, even third world relatively nations, economically speaking, I mean, or second world, or whatever you want to classify it, even countries that are not in the top shelf of economic power are doing everything they can to get access to this new digital asset class, right? This new financial asset class. There has not been a new financial asset class in hundreds of years, right? If you look at your history. Um, if you study economics and finance, you'll know it's been at least, depending on how you look at it, a few hundred years, like 200-300 years minimum, and really more if you actually look at the proper way that these things are classified. Think about that. It's been hundreds of years since a new financial asset has been created. Why? Well, because it, with blockchain technology, tracked and certified. Now, if that doesn't make your head go, what? Right. What does that mean? Well, at some point along the process of this cow being born and being served, a blockchain ID was associated with this cow, right, or cattle. And all the way through the process of converting the cattle from whatever point they tagged it to the plate, all along that way, that beef was recorded through the steps of its journey and can be tracked on the blockchain in which it was done, right? So this kind of thing, where you track food, can actually be a massive boon to the economy, to the agricultural industry, which is significant in any country because you all got to eat, right? I don't know anybody who wants to starve to death. I don't know any country that wants their people to starve to death, right? And there's a lot of people that got to eat in this world. There's 7 billion of us. We have to eat every day, right? We should be. I know a lot of us aren't, but you should be eating every day, hopefully. And there's going to be more and more tracking of food and drink, right, and other things we consume with blockchain tech. Now, you might say, that's ridiculous. You're not going to track every sandwich sold at the kiosk with a blockchain chip. Yeah, maybe not for now, right? Maybe not. But maybe in 5-10 years, it will be, because it's very easy to do. We're talking about QR scanning, right, which is not a complicated thing for any phone to do. And we're talking about other things that, generally speaking, are not complicated on the surface level for the consumer to do, as long as they have the proper training, as long as they have the proper education on how it should work. By the way, once again, if you're new to this and you can't see what's going on, leave a message in the chat, or try, I don't know, to message the chat or leave a comment. We'll see if it pops up, because we're getting some weird messages here on the live stream. Really, I don't get this whole whatever. We will see. Stream latency. Yeah. Anyway. So, as you can see here, the topic of blockchain by fiat, right, is that governments themselves are promoting this idea. Governments that, on the one hand, are saying, we don't like blockchain. We do like blockchain. We don't like crypto. We do like crypto. They have a lot of doublespeak, right? Even China, where the president just a few weeks ago made his announcement that China was all in on the blockchain. He didn't specify Bitcoin, of course, but he did specify that China should invest in blockchain technologies. And here he is, boom, 2 weeks later, having dinner with the president of France, eating blockchain certified beef. All right, you can tell me that has no impact on the market? Right? Of course it does. Absolutely it does. Is it a lagging indicator, or is it a leading indicator? No, it doesn't. First of all, it doesn't matter which indicator type it is, unless you're actually trying to catch the wave of the trade. In which case, good luck to you. Hey, good luck to you. This is not a trading channel, right? We don't talk about that stuff. I'm talking about the impact on marketing, right? It is going to have a massive impact on culture, blockchain and cryptocurrency. Okay, you want more evidence of this? Well, check this out. John Stossel? You ever heard of this guy? I'm not going to play this video because, copyright strikes and all, content claims. But you can see here, right? I think, you can see that John was speaking about, he has a new video out about blockchain and he speaks to like Naomi Brockwell, and he speaks to Peter Schiff, who talks about the gold issue and why gold is maybe more valuable than why he thinks gold is better than Bitcoin, and why he thinks you should sell your Bitcoin if you don't want to lose your money, whatever. Like an actual presentation of the piece by John, and he talks about Libra and he talks about Bitcoin. The actual presentation of the material, all in all, is pretty pro Bitcoin. So if you haven't seen this, it's a very interesting video. I'm not going to play it here, but you can just search for John Stossel. The title is Bitcoin Better Money, right? He just put it out a few days ago. I think like on November 5th, it says here. And yeah, whatever. If you like it, sign up to his videos if you like them, I guess, or whatever. I don't, or just watch the video. It's interesting. But why is this interesting? More than just the 5-minute video. It's the fact that it's John Stossel, right? A very mainstream reporter. Right? This guy used to be on Fox Business News, right? He's kind of like the libertarian reporter who outs all, he tries to have ethics and tries to uncover people who are usually doing something pretty scandalous. He likes to do kind of, longer style reporting than usually, not just a 1 or 2 minute quick journalistic report, but he does kind of like in-depth, interviews and reportage, whatever you want to call it, investigative reporting, right? His own brand of 60-minute kind of style reporting, right? But it's John Stossel. He's a very well-known reporter in the United States and, frankly, around the world, right? When he's doing a piece like this, and we know he's been into Bitcoin, he has some investments in Bitcoin, he even talks about it in this clip, he jokes around with Peter Schiff about it, like, so am I a fool for having bought Bitcoin low and having made good return on it? You'll see. It's a good question and answer. It's funny. But the point of the video, right, is, again, it's a mainstream guy reporting this stuff. Yes, you see Bitcoin in the mainstream, but you usually see it in pretty negative light, right? And here's a case where you don't. Here's a case where you see it in a relatively positive light. At a time when the price is, in the market kind of all over the place, sideways, moving, whatever you want to call it, it's moving around a lot. There's a lot of volatility. It's freaking out a lot of people who are trying to trade this stuff. Quite funny, really, if you are. I mean, I hope nobody here that watches this depends on trading as a living, because it can be quite difficult. I can assure you. Although some people do make quite a lot of profit doing that, it is not easy. However, that is also one of the main avenues that people do get into this particular market, by either buying it and holding it, or by buying it and trying to trade it for a profit. So those are important skills to know if you're going to be in this space, and if that interests you, at least to know what's going on and what to avoid, because trading itself, especially if you trade with anything like leverage, can be extremely dangerous, right, for your financial well-being. But being involved and finding out, and investing your time and your mind and your education in something that is essentially the future of finance and the future of value transfer and the future of asset transfer, it would probably behoove you to learn something about blockchain technology. That's the way I feel about it. If you're new to this space, welcome. Hi, I'm glad you're here. And I hope what you learn from this, if anything, is that this is a space worth investigating more if you don't know about it, right? But if you are familiar with this space, as pretty much anyone that's listening to my videos usually is, then you're familiar with the impact that marketing is having on these projects, right? I said for years now, you can watch my videos going back, the more we invest in proper marketing of good projects, the more we're going to see good results. And here, for example, is a great result, right? This guy invested his time to make a pretty good production, right? High quality televised production, or fit for TV production, about Bitcoin. And Okay, it's not getting millions of views, but this is a tiny space. And anytime a guy who doesn't normally cover Bitcoin talks about Bitcoin and gets another 80,000 new people to watch it, maybe half of these people are Bitcoin aficionados because we're all excited to see the mainstream media, covering this in not a negative light. But the other 40,000 new people, they don't know so much about it. Maybe they've heard the name, but they don't really watch it. And this is only a 5-minute video, so it's not like they're going to become kung fu masters of crypto technologies now. But they will get an introduction and get a big picture idea, and maybe it'll increase their curiosity and bring new minds to the space. People that can contribute new things, right? Their own resources of time and effort and energy and insights and who knows what, right? Because like I always said, I mean, the next killer thing, the next great tech, the next amazing invention is always just around the corner 20 years from now, invented by a kid who hasn't been born yet, right? That's always the next thing, right? Think about it, right? It's not going to be invented by some guy in his 60s or 70s, most likely. I mean, could be, but highly unlikely to be, the next thing that's going to really take over like a tsunami, over the world is usually going to be invented by somebody that still has a young and, accelerating mind, right? At a very fast pace. That's just the nature of technology, right? That's the way it is. And so when we see governments and we see mainstream media and we see media outlets and social media outlets and editorial cartoons like my own, and we see things popping up all over YouTube. We see personalities talking about this topic. We see entire nations of people deciding their young need to learn about this, right? When was the last time they introduced curriculum that you needed to learn about a certain type of money? I don't remember, by the way, having been educated, partly in Europe and partly in the U.S., partly elsewhere. I don't remember ever being required to learn about a particular type of currency other than for like a class or two in high school. Right? We did this. I think we did a field trip once because I probably went to some. I went to some decent high school, and they sent us to one of the U.S. mints, right, in Philadelphia, where they print dollars. Right? That was pretty much the only time I think our school ever bothered to teach us anything about the dollar very much. They did not focus on that, right? They just did not. And that was in a school that relatively was considered to have, resources at its disposal, right? Not a bad zip code, right? They had everything they needed and then some. And interestingly enough, it's the same school district, and in fact the same high school, where the administration, some years later, 20-something years later, gave school students computers to use at home, laptops, right? And they used those laptops to record students without permission, right? And it went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, who ruled against the school district. And then they did it again, which was even more unbelievable. But anyway, so this school district, in a very affluent place that has all this technology, they are more concerned with surveilling their students than they are about teaching them about things like money and financial technology and alt-fi and DeFi, cryptocurrencies, right? And that's in an affluent neighborhood of the United States. But in France, which is also a relatively strong economy around the world, they've decided that's it. Our entire population needs to start learning this stuff, and we're going to start with the people that are easiest to teach, and that's the high school students, because they are still required by law to do what the government tells them. And they're at an old enough age that their brains can think about this stuff at a higher level than, let's say, a toddler or a baby, right? Or even a tween or a whatever. Right? If you're already in high school, your brain should be at a level where you're able to learn things pretty well, hopefully. So that's the idea. They want to raise the national standard of education and understanding for their future. Right? They're not doing this for today or tomorrow or next year or even 5 years from now. They're doing this for the tens of millions of people who will eventually work in this field or who will be impacted by it even if they don't work in it, right? You might just be taking bitcoins for money in 5, 10 years. You might be taking Ethereum. You might be taking some currency that doesn't exist yet. You might be sending money transfers with XRP. You might be doing payments with Litecoin. You might be using Monero. You might be using Zcash. You might be using anything, right? Neo, I don't care what. Qtum, I don't care. You have no idea what's going to succeed 5, 10 years from now in this space. We only know what has succeeded until now and what has failed, right? But we also know that all the failures add up to a whole lot of learning for us. And they're vital. When people say there's too many coins, that is complete nonsense. Were there too many websites? Was the web too big? Was social media too big? Utter nonsense, okay? You want people to make different experiments with this tech so that you can figure out what works and what doesn't. You want different governments to have different policies so that you can figure out what works and what doesn't. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's some fast fighter jets flying overhead. Anyway, that's another thing. Bitcoin for peace, man. Yeah, hopefully we won't see any Bitcoin wars that are actual Bitcoin wars, right, in the future. But don't discount that possibility, right? If any particular nation ever gains a significant share to the point where they can actually manipulate an entire economy or many economies, well, that could be very dangerous. And that's one of the reasons there cannot be just one cryptocurrency, and I understand that view. Well, there can be, but it would not necessarily be good, right? Nobody. It's also ridiculous to accept that anybody would want only one form of value that you can have. I mean, it's just nonsense. Crypto maximalism and Bitcoin maximalism, Bitcoin supremacy, whatever you want to call it. Anybody who thinks that there will only be one cryptocurrency to rule them all, it's complete and utter nonsense, right? Like, there's so many different use cases for them. And that's why they're not just teaching Bitcoin in France. They're learning about different cryptos and blockchain. And that's why they're doing the same thing in Russia. And that's why even in China they're saying invest in blockchain, because there's so much more to it. Now, yes, the bulk majority of it is still Bitcoin, and it will remain probably the king for a while. And I do love me some Bitcoin. Who doesn't if you're in this space? I mean, unless you've only had bad experiences with it, which could be. Generally speaking, it is an amazing piece of technology, right? And so are other coins that are out there, right? But my point in all of this is that there is a large and growing interest in this space, and it is happening day by day, week by week, month by month. You are definitely not late. Okay, you're not the earliest of earlies. This stuff's been around for a good 11 years now, Pope. So don't think you're the first in, because you're not. But even if there's only 10, 20 million active people in this space, you're very much not late. Right? Like, you need to know that this is not. You might be experiencing buffering. This is not a time to be wondering, oh no, did I miss something in Bitcoin, in history? Am I going to not have the opportunity to make a fortune in Bitcoin? Well, maybe you won't make a fortune in Bitcoin, right? Who cares, right? Not relevant to your context necessarily. Think about what your context is. If you have already made a fortune in Bitcoin, good for you. Awesome. That's amazing. If you haven't, don't worry about it. There's plenty of other cryptos to be involved in. And also, Bitcoin is far from reaching its full potential, right? I mean, significantly far, right? If you understand how this stuff is measured out, um, the probability is that it will, in all likelihood, continue to grow in value. I mean, real world value, practical value, right? Useful value to people. Um, whether that has to do with the price of it or not, I don't really care. I look at how this stuff is impacting humanity, how we engage with the new technology. Like, this stuff matters. It mattered decades ago when we were trying to figure out how will people interact with the web and email and all that. And it matters how people will interact with this new kind of digital cash or e-money or digital gold or cryptocurrency, whatever you want to call it. Right? It matters, right? It is a small but growing industry worth hundreds of billions, low hundreds of billions, in theory, of dollars. It's a tiny industry still. You can still be very early. And there are many projects that don't even exist yet, that will exist. And will Libra take over or not? Don't know, don't care. Completely moot. Will any other project completely dominate all other projects? No. There will always be room for more than one project because it is not the nature of humanity to choose just one. Right? Nobody's going to say there's only one cryptocurrency. We're not going to use anything else. I mean, the people that say that are, they're not thinking clearly or they're not speaking honestly. Okay? They're not fully disclosing their agenda on why they're saying that. And it may even be completely obvious and transparent. But they're still hiding behind something of a mask for whatever reason. Maybe it's ego, maybe it's money, maybe it's power, maybe it's some combination of all that, maybe it's something completely different.